Hello again, and welcome back to Edgemont UMC. I'm Pastor Henry, and we're continuing our series talking about anxiety and specifically how do we deal with anxiety. We've talked about some of the things that we can do on our own, a prayer journal, or some meditating on the scriptures. We've talked about getting our own gratitude journal. We talked about exercising, and those are all things that we can do with friends or maybe as a family. But a lot of times, those are something that we do on our own. We do by ourselves. We do as a personal practice that helps us deal with anxiety in the moment. For the one today, we're not going to be able to do this one alone. In fact, I think it's best described by one of the lifelines that we had. If you ever watched the game show Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, you've got to phone a friend. I don't know if anybody remembers that game show. That was huge. That came out when I was in high school, and it was the biggest thing ever. And it was so cool when you got stumped, when you got in a really bad spot, when you had a really hard question in that game and didn't know how to get it. One of the things you could do was phone a friend, someone that you trusted, someone that you thought had a lot of knowledge and could help you out in that situation. Dealing with anxiety, trying to get through anxious times, that does not have to be something that we battle on our own. It doesn't have to be something that we just hold to ourselves. In fact, one of the best things that we can do is we can talk to a family member or a friend that we trust. That's an important thing to have in our lives. In the Gifts of Imperfection, Brene Brown talks a lot about that. And I had several quotes from her that I just really want to share with us, I think exemplify why we need to reach out. The first one says, practice courage and reach out. We have to own our story and share it with someone who has earned the right to hear it, someone whom we can count on to respond with compassion. We need courage, compassion, and connection. ASAP. Shame hates it when we reach out and tell our story. It hates having words wrapped around it. It can't survive being shared. Shame loves secrecy. The most dangerous thing to do after a shaming experience is hide or bury our story. When we bury our story, the shame metastasizes. And I think that's what can happen to a lot of us with anxiety. We are ashamed of what anxiety does to us. And so because we're ashamed of that, we try to hide it. And a lot of times that makes our anxiety worse. It makes it go up. It spreads it to different parts of our lives. Where if we have the courage to share that with a trusted friend or family member, some of that can get alleviated because we're not having to bear that burden alone. But we do have to be careful, and I stress be careful about that. She said, but here's the tricky part about compassion and connecting. We can't call just anyone. It's not that simple. This is back to Brene Brown, by the way. I have a lot of good friends, but there are only a handful of people whom I can count on to practice compassion when I'm in a dark shame place. If we share our shame story with the wrong person, they can easily become one more piece of flying debris in an already dangerous storm. We want solid connection in a situation like this, something akin to a sturdy tree firmly planted on the ground. If you're struggling and having a really anxious moment, you don't want just that person who's going to say, you shouldn't worry about it. Or, heaven forbid, we get one of those, the Bible says don't worry, so don't worry. You want someone who can empathize with you in that moment, who will listen to you, who will hear you, give you the chance to get that off your chest. Finally, Dr. Brown says, our stories are not meant for everyone. Hearing them is a privilege, and we should always ask ourselves this before we share. Who has earned the right to hear my story? If we have one or two people in our lives who can sit with us and hold space for our shame stories and love us for our strengths and struggles, we are incredibly lucky. Your story matters, and you ought to share that with someone who it matters to. So I hope today that you have a couple or three people like that in your lives who you can share stuff with, who you can just pick up your phone when you're having a really, really tough time and call, or like a lot of us do, text, and just get it out there. It's important to have those connections. And especially for us as people of faith, as Christians, one of the best things to have connections like that, we need to be people who can have those connections. The Apostle Paul tells the church in Ephesians chapter 4, verses 1 through 6, as a prisoner for the Lord, then, I urge you to live a life worthy of the calling you have received. Be completely humble and gentle. Be patient, bearing with one another in love. Make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. There is one body and one Spirit, just as you were called to one hope when you were called, one Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all, who is over all and through all and in all. That's the kind of people we're called to be. We're called to be those who can be humble and gentle and patient and hear the stories of a friend of ours, a spouse, a family member who is struggling with anxiety. When we give like that, there's a very good opportunity then when it happens to us, we're going to have that relationship capital there, be able to share with one another because we've let them know that we can be trusted, and they have shown that they trust us, and a relationship bond is formed. So today, or throughout this next week, when you find yourself struggling with anxiety, who is someone you can reach out to? Who is someone that you trust and you can share? Try reaching out. It can do a wonderful thing for you, but also for that relationship, and both of you can come out of it stronger. We'll see you next week. Thank you for watching our video. I hope that you will like our video, that you'll feel free to share this video so we can spread the word about what we're doing here at Edgemont. And please subscribe to our channel and click that little bell to get notifications when we upload a new video. Thanks.